Good evening, folks. Shiloh here with you with my co-host Luke Simons. So, welcome to Here's the Deal. Tonight we got a very cool guest in Jan Wangler from Ladies of Another View. So we're gonna bring her on here.
Well, before you do, Shiloh,
Sure.
Mrs. Wagner, just so everyone knows, is an absolute patriot. One that I don't get a chance to talk to much, and she's not on the show right now, but she's watching.
Mm-hmm.
She's just been a voice of conservative North Dakota wisdom, and what an honor to have her on the show tonight.
Yes.
This lady is a patriot. Like, without people like her, the legislature, the Senate, could not do anything in North Dakota. She's just a wonderful, wonderful person, and she's an organizer, and I could just go on and on and on. Those of you that are familiar with Ladies of a Different View, oh yeah, for sure. Bring her on, Shiloh.
Sure.
I'm excited about
Without further ado, here she is.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Jan. How are you?
I'm fabulous. Like they say, I'm perfect, but I'm getting better.
That's awesome.
What a pleasure.
So, thanks again for being on with us tonight. And I guess tonight we'd like to talk a little bit about Sanford Health and what's going on with them holding this summit. So, I guess if you would like to
share your knowledge.
Yes, bring us up to speed. We'd certainly appreciate it, and we'll go from there.
Well, we touched on it lightly earlier this week on our program, and it was kind of upsetting to me when I ran across the headlines, because we've been hearing so much about so many professionals that are encouraging and empowering people to make these changes to children. And we're not talking like children as into 18, 25-year-olds. We're talking grade school children, middle school children. And Sanford Health is helping to sponsor, they're not the only sponsor, but they are helping to sponsor a Midwest Gender Identity Summit. And it's taking place in Sioux Falls, South Dakota at the Sanford Research Center. And, it's coming up in January, and this is not the first one, but the fact that it's getting put in our faces all the time, we're finding out that they are paying for education for teachers to promote this stuff in schools. And when we contact our local school system, at least my experience locally, is they continue to deny that the teachers are being educated in this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And they continue to deny that teachers are promoting any of this stuff. Yet when you have a communication from any one of them, they will name all of their pronouns on their emails or their letters or their information home. And they're asking children in school what their preferences are. Now, I can see if someone had a super old-fashioned name that they weren't exactly proud of, and they had a nickname instead. That's not the same as what's happening here. So it's very upsetting.
If I may, the article that you sent me, it says this is the third annual meeting for Midwest Gender Identity Summit. They're calling it Transformation Project South Dakota, or Transformation Project SD. And
that's a nonprofit in South Dakota.
Yeah, I seen that. And I read a part of the article where they were meeting with these children, and they were having them burn their names and pronouns in these kind of meetings. So yeah, this is I was quite shocked and concerned when I read this article that you had sent. So
the dilemma for me, I think, is to learn that we think it isn't happening up here, and it's happening big time. Mm-hmm. If it was a one-time thing and we had a say in where that information goes, but we do not. And parents need to know that this is happening. They need to know that medical professionals we spoke earlier this week also with some people from the movie Disconnected, and if you haven't seen it or you haven't heard about it, it's disconnectedthemovie.com. You can find it there. And they're explaining exactly what happens to some of these folks that are, I'm sorry, I can't think of a better word than encouraged to do something they maybe wouldn't have thought of on their own. We've heard of the things like tomboys and, boys that want to play mom or something when they're playing house with their sister and they want to switch roles. But that's temporary and that's make believe. That has nothing to do with body I'm going to get the term wrong, dysmorphia. Is that the correct term? Where a boy thinks he's a girl or a girl thinks they're a boy. And if you have adults in your life who are supposed to have a moral compass and who are supposed to be the ones that you can reach out to get your questions answered, instead encouraging you to follow through with these fantasies and to actually do things that are mutilations to your body. I guess I have the belief that the body is a temple and everything that you do to it is either helping it or harming it. And I can't see how doing a mastectomy to a prepubescent girl or, castrating a boy or any of these things and having kind of a reassignment surgery and all of the hormones and all of the treatments that go along with it. I can't see that as doing something positive to the temple.
Right.
Jan, if I can just interrupt you real quick, what was the name of that? And Shiloh, if you could you please put that up on our screen for our viewers?
It's called Disconnected, and it's with a DYS instead of the regular spelling. This movie is super powerful. We had a chance to preview it. I believe it comes out the 12th of this month, but you can purchase a preview of it online, and you can also get the DVD at Disconnected the Movie, and I think it's .org.
Disconnected. Can you say that one more time? I'm sorry, I was bringing it up.
Disconnected the Movie, and I believe it's .org versus the .com thing.
Disconnected the movie.org.
I know that there was a gender summit of sorts, not along the same lines, but kind of warning people about what's happening here about a month ago. And Dr. Walt Heyer was here, and he is a gentleman who in his late teens transitioned from male to female, and that was after years and years of heckling and pushing from his grandmother, who had care of him and dressed him in dresses all the time. And she didn't want a grandson, she wanted a granddaughter. So, a lot of this was on her. But he went through reassignment surgery. He went through the transition, all the hormones and everything. And he lived as a woman for a number of years. And, it was after he came back to the church that he reversed that and became himself again, so to speak. But he talks about all of the issues that they have when they, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. This is a spiritual battle. We all know that it's pretty much good against evil these days.
So if I could, I want to read a little bit of this article that what's going on here, just so people can understand. Workshops at the one-day gathering will focus on an array of subjects meant to advance the lie that men and women can change their gender. Several of the session topics include supporting your two-spirit and native LGBTQ plus patients and coworkers. Learning to address implicit bias towards LGBTQ plus and 2S patients, and gender affirming care and the attitude of affirmation in assessment. Presenters at the conference include an assortment of left-wing activists and social justice-minded medical professionals, including Natasha Smith, Sanford's head of diversity, equality, and inclusion. It goes on to say in here, the transformation project ability to partner with Sanford Health is no small matter. According to the website, Sanford is the largest rural health system in the United States. It also serves more than 1 million patients and 220,000 health plan members across the 250,000 square miles, including parts of Minnesota and surrounding states. The company operates 47 medical centers and employs 2,800 physicians.
It's a lot.
The transformation project rarely engages in activities that target conservative lawmakers, or regularly, sorry. The transformation project regularly engages in activities that target conservative lawmakers as well as young adults. The group helped lead opposition to South Dakota bill that would have made it a felony for doctors to perform gender reassignment surgeries on children or prescribe them puberty blockers. It gets worse as we go.
Well, and it's not just our state. I mean, you have to understand, like, this is par for the course in California. There's a couple in Texas where the mom wanted a girl, but they have a son. We know that the custody battle is still ongoing. The mother has moved to California where they allowed for all of this to happen. And so they're in the process of changing this young boy into a girl. And the dad cannot do anything. He can't use regular pronouns, can't say he, can't call him by his birth name, none of it. And what are we going to do to change this? Or are we?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you're absolutely right, Jan. Why the liberal left, the tolerant liberal left, is not tolerant to the church is because the church is the one making the stand against this.
Yes.
And I would just encourage every pastor watching this, you are powerful. God has put you on a podium to speak loudly. And if you change one person or encourage one person, it is a sermon after all. It is a sermon. You are going to a seminar when you go to church. You are motivating people. It is a
Oh, Luke,
Yeah,
there you go. Did you hit the button or something?
No, it was a phone call.
Oh, I see.
She'll probably call back again. That's my daughter. But so I guess what I'm saying is pastors, you're powerful. This is where you shine.
Amen.
This is where you get up and encourage people. People say, "Oh."
Another phone call.
Mm-hmm.
I guess she's not watching the show. I guess what I'm saying is people don't realize what's happening in our own schools. I'm a barber. I have kids coming here all the time. We have litter boxes in Dickinson where little fluffies, little kitties that are being called kitties, but not at the Christmas program where grandma can hear them being called kitty, by the way. It's just ridiculous. Another story I heard in the legislature, Jan, was from a testimony from a young man that was raised with parents that were misguided, we'll say, and he had an older sister, and he was raised, and they loved his sister, and he played with dolls, so they encouraged him, and they really encouraged him, and pretty soon he was in dresses, and so on and so forth. Well, they put him on hormone blockers, Jan, and of course, that's chemical castration is what that is. And he realized at the age of about 14 or 15 years old, after he hit adolescence, that he didn't like boys sexually. He liked girls. Well, the problem is he had, and I'm just going to name things. He had a penis the size of a child. He had testicles the size of a child. And I'm sorry if this language offends anybody. I don't mean it to. I'm just trying to use clinical explanation.
Anatomical, yes.
Thank you. Um, after I got kicked out of the legislature, Jan, I'm very nervous around women and talking to
We still need to talk about that, but go ahead.
so, anyways, he realized, so he went to the doctor with his parents, and the doctor told him, there is no reversal. Your testicles are forever this way. Your penis is forever this way, and you will not be able to turn this around. So they thought, well, maybe he can still become a girl. Well, wrong there too. The procedure, and I found all this out in committee. The procedure is they flip the testicles inside out, making a fake vagina, and his testicles were so small that they weren't fully developed because he was an infant, a very small adolescent, that there was no reversal. They destroyed this young man's life. They destroyed his life. And now what he's doing is going to legislature to legislature, speaking about how bad his family destroyed his life. And it was liberalism. It was the anti-God agenda that did this to his family. Just a little bit of interjection there. I'm really interested to hear what you have to say here tonight.
Well, I guess for me, it hurts my heart to know that we are doing this to our children.
Under our noses.
When you have an administration and you have people of authority that are empowering these woke teachers and administrators, and this, we know that it's not just on the like the K through 12 level. We know that this goes all the way through, secondary education, that they are encouraging people to experiment. They are encouraging people to live outside themselves. And, they're trying to tell everybody that they need to save the world by being their special selves. Well, I think that, from the time of conception, we are already a miracle. And to alter what God has given us it's an affront. It's an admonishment. It's like you get so passionate about how this evil is taking root, and it's been doing so for a lot longer than most people realize. Let's put it that way. And I had a question the other day from a colleague, and they said, to what point will we fight evil? Will we stoop to the same level as evil in order to stop evil? And the David and Goliath story came into play there. And it's like, well, yes, in some respects, we take a look at everything and, we have to pray about it, and we have to make sure it's good on our hearts and that it is not the devil creeping in to tell us to do something. But, David took down the giant. He killed him, and he cut off his head and paraded around with it. So, was that a very Christian thing to do? That was before Christ. But, we still need to look at what measures we would go to. And right now, it seems Americans, or at least North Dakotans, are more like somebody else will do it, or please just leave me alone and let me live my life. And if I ignore it, it will go away. And I'm sorry to report to you that none of those things apply.
Or they'll
We have to
say,
step
well,
up.
it doesn't happen here. Like what happens up here in these little towns, they'll say, we don't have that problem, even though that we've got the problem just 40 miles away in Williston and all these other little towns. I mean, Ray, Tioga, Stanley, the list goes on and on down Highway 2 and everywhere else that they say that they don't have it, but it's in the schools.
Well, when you take a look at North Dakota and you see that North Dakota is one of the most powerful states in the nation, technically we have it all. We have energy, we have education, we have our military, we have every kind of resource and food. Yes.
Yeah.
We have it all here. And a lot of other states would like to have it. In fact, a lot of other countries would like to have it.
Good point. Good.
Ergo Fufang and the Chinese coming in and buying up land. And we think that, what difference does it make? It's just one wet corn mill plant. And all of the people up in the Grand Forks area got very riled up against all of the things that were happening there.
Mm-hmm.
And kudos to Beck TV. They've been reporting on this from the beginning, exposing what's going on. They got CFIUS involved. Whether CFIUS stands up and puts their granny pants on or they put their big boy pants on and pull them up, we have yet to see. But the people of that area had an opportunity in November. All of those people on the city council that they were fighting and that they were saying weren't standing up for the people, they all got reelected unopposed. What does that say about the people that are complaining?
Right. Well, it's the same thing with even our state. Yeah. I mean, speaking of the Fufang thing, I know Sons of Liberty have been out there quite a bit as well. Obviously, Gerald kind of made headlines when he threatened to come over the table on that guy. But at any rate, so I've been kind of close to that subject too. But I mean, let's just look at our election here, in November, this last one, 49% of North Dakota voted. And I would say that that's even flawed a little bit. I don't think that's the correct numbers either.
Probably not.
And, it's like, the funny thing to me is when we talk about term limits, because obviously term limits was a big issue in this election. Now that it's over and they won, the same people that are saying term limits, I have conversations with, and they're like, well, what can we do? We have to do something. What can we do? Because people aren't engaged and they're not paying attention and people don't hurt enough. Well, therein lies the problem is people need to do their due diligence. Number one, become an informed voter.
Yes. In
my opinion, not just vote for the letter behind their name, but become an informed voter and actually get involved.
Well, Shiloh, if I just interject with that real quick.
Sure.
The Romans had it figured out. More bread, more circus. And if you do that, just a very minute part of the population will ever get involved. And that is true. I mean, this is science. This is psychology 101. We are being studied. And unfortunately, that is true. And on your point too, Jan, this isn't new to us. You're absolutely right. I like that you say that. Every time I talk to you, I feel the Spirit of God on you. I just feel it all over you. You're right. There is nothing new under the sun. Nero, Jesus came back at a time when Nero was parading himself down the street as a girl, marrying a 14 or 13-year-old boy. And all of Rome had to come and watch and give their blessing on Nero doing this. This is nothing new. This is nothing new, Christians. This is just nothing new. So you're right. You're absolutely right.
We have also a serious problem in a lot of our public schools, not just from what they're teaching, though we're concerned about it. And the legislature, they started last session. They didn't quite take it far enough, in my opinion, but there's always room for improvement. But they banned the teaching of CRT, but they didn't put any teeth in it. So if a teacher or any education professional disagrees with them and wants to push something, there's no consequence. And I'm sorry, this day and age, it's just like a misbehaving child. If there's no consequence, the behavior will continue. And we aren't holding them accountable.
So just to quiz you on that, Jen, real quick. So is that the state's problem or is that local control? And that would come back to people aren't being involved in their local government. And I will add, in Muslim schools, they aren't teaching critical race theory. In
True.
Muslim schools, they aren't having a lot of these problems. They're having other problems. I'm not defending Muslims, but Muslim men get very involved and very worked up, and they show up to meetings. And guess what? The schools aren't doing these things in Muslim communities. And I'm thinking, so is it the state's fault, or is it back to local control's fault? I mean, just something to throw out there. I'd like to hear your idea on that.
Well, on Monday, the state got together, or the legislature had some committee meetings, and one of them was on this issue. And what they are doing is they are asking all of the local districts to set up policy to make sure that their staff does not teach this. So there is some local control with it. However, they could set up their local policy, but there could be a single consequence that was, even if it was suggested by the state, or if there would have been a parental committee that would suggest what happens, whether it is, a slap on the fingers the first time, and maybe you're written up the second time, and third time you're out. I don't know what the answer is. I haven't been involved in a committee like that. Locally, I have been involved in trying to hold our local school board accountable. We have watched how all of our property tax dollars are being spent, and we have questions on them. And when we try to get answers on those questions, we are either given half answers, redacted answers, or no answers at all, which made us curious. It's like, well, what is it they don't want us to know? And I would let you know that we have been carrying a petition around in the Bismarck area. Almost all of Burleigh County would qualify to sign it, to have the state auditor's office do a complete comprehensive audit on all the books, records, everything of Bismarck Public Schools. Now, I know that they are nervous. They know they're probably watching your show right now. I know that they tune into our show whenever we talk about this subject, and I think they're nervous. Let's put it that way. Today, there was a commercial bid letting for some information, or for some properties that the Bismarck Public Schools was taking bids on. And one of the people that was there is one of our petition carriers, and was asking some of the people, because they're all from the area, if they would be interested in signing the petition. And she got a number of them to sign. Suddenly, one of the people running the meeting came out, and I'm sorry I don't have the name yet, or I would easily share it for you. So I'm waiting to get that name, but came out and said, hey, if any one of you at this meeting signs that petition, you're not eligible. You're no longer going to be eligible to bid on anything with Bismarck Public Schools. Now, in my book, that's either coercion, blackmail. I mean, if it's not unethical or illegal, I don't know what is. So we're up against all kinds of things.
Yeah.
They're trying to scare people away from signing the petition, and that's evil.
You know what's interesting about that is sometimes your enemy, I know we don't have enemies, so bad word, but the opposition will tell you your answer. And what the opposition did to the NRA is they did frivolous lawsuits from all angles, and they almost bankrupt the NRA. They almost did it. They boycotted the NRA from having an NRA high class meal, dining hall, not dining hall. You know what I'm trying to say, I guess.
Sure.
Restaurant in New York City. They actually banned them. And so until we take it serious, like what you just said, I mean, that's outstanding. I'm not going to say who. I was just, today I was, I don't want to get this guy in trouble.
Fair.
I was looking at an investment in town here, and he pulled me aside and he said, "Luke, there's a lot of things I'd like to talk to you about." And I was like, "And I don't want to tell a whole lot about it because I don't want this to get out to who it was." And he said, the reason you got kicked out of the legislature was because you stood on principle. That's why. He said, but none of our local officials are showing up to meetings that they used to come to because you've educated too many of them, and now they're talking to us. He said, now it wasn't about me. Don't get me wrong. He said, I feel, and this is exactly what you said, Jan, I feel instead of making criminals the problem or people that are using the system incorrectly, they're coming after law-abiding good citizens that have legitimate questions, and all of a sudden we are the targets. So if we go to the city county council or county commission meetings, we are the problem. We are the squeaky wheels, not like we are the solution. We are the taxpayers who, without us, you wouldn't need this committee concept. We become the criminals. He said that's exactly how they're treating us. And that's kind of what you were just saying too. Well, I tell long, boring stories, don't I?
Hey, Jan, do you have a website or anything that people can sign the petition on as well, or not?
No, they have it. Yeah, the state requires us to have you sign it in person, and someone from this area has to witness it, and all of them will be notarized.
Do you guys have places to go? Is there a certain?
We will be at Kirkwood Mall this Saturday and Sunday and the following week for sure. And we are regrouping at that Christmas week, and then we'll find out, where we're going to set up after that.
Okay.
We're trying to gather more people that would be interested in carrying the petition. Maybe it's something you want to take to work, or you have a group. We'd love to get in touch with the homeschool group in this area. I do have one gentleman from that came before the school board and was asking if he could use a specific curriculum because, everybody had the option to be in school or not in school when they first came back after COVID. And they had been using a curriculum from a school in Western North Dakota, and they wanted to stay with it. And this school board would not release them to do that. So they were frustrated, and they're, not out of retribution, but because they agreed that we should be able to look at who's making what decisions with our money and what they're doing with it. They're also participating. But when you sign something like this, all you're doing is authorizing the state auditor to take a look at the records of the school district. They can't do that on their own. They can only audit the DPI of the state. They can't do individual school districts unless a percentage, and I believe it's 35% of the people that voted in the last school board election sign a petition authorizing him to do so. So it can't be just two people that say, hey, go do this.
Right.
But the auditor's office did, give us some language to use on the petition. And it does say that this audit will be charged to the political subdivision that is the subject of this petition as set forth in North Dakota Century Code 54-10-15. So everybody's like, well, who's going to pay for this audit? Because this will be a big deal. It's part of our taxpayer dollars. And a portion of your tax-paying dollars, your property tax anyways, in this county, almost 50% of it, or about 50% of it, goes to the school system. We've had questions on enrollment numbers. We've had questions on construction costs. There are a lot of programs that are offered at one high school that are not offered at another. Some programs for girls that are not offered for boys. And we're talking things like the girls' hockey team gets to go practice hockey during school hours, and they get a gym credit for it, but none of the other sports do. All these other kids in their sports have to go to practice up till like 7 p.m. at night or whatever. So there's some inequities that have nothing to do with gender, or race, or
Mhm.
any other thing. There are some programs at some of the high schools where the kids are eligible for college credits and getting their degrees before they graduate high school, and not at the other two high schools. When we ask questions, we don't get full answers, or they'll touch on it, but they aren't touching the reasons behind it, and that's what we're asking. I have had a sit-down meeting with the superintendent.
Mhm.
He was he was not very nice. While he was somewhat cordial, he was very dismissive. They basically told me that I was too simple. When I asked about budget items, they said, well, you can't do simple math, Mrs. Wangler. Well, if there's 10 kids and the state and the federal government give them $10 to educate them, if you take 10 times 10, we should be spending $100. But there's this many kids reported from the local level, there's this many that you reported to DPI, and there's this many that you're talking about in the paper. So which number is it? So they will tell you that they have a formula, which
Of course
is
they do.
fine, which is fine. They can have the formula, but if they're not answering the questions of where the money's going and where it's coming from, who's giving it to you for what purpose, and we've seen that on a state level and on local levels, that almost every school district misapplied COVID dollars that they were given. Those dollars, federal dollars, our tax money, folks, was given to these folks for learning loss. Learning loss, that those are programs and things that the kids weren't privy to during that COVID time. If they got behind in math, if they got behind in reading, that's learning loss. So if there's programs and tools that they need to make up for that, that's what that money was for. It's like the federal government put all of this on us,
Yeah.
and then they gave the money to the states to distribute for that purpose. But instead, like in our area, they spent it on building another school.
Yep.
Two of them, in fact.
It happens a lot.
So
There's some administrators too that got raises. There was facilities built, and I'm all for facilities, but let's take a look at the proficiency scores, because there is not a
100%.
one school system in North Dakota that has great proficiency scores. And even the smaller schools their scores are worse, surprisingly. You would think with less kids and rural areas they'd be better, but they're not.
So, Jan, how did you find out that they used that for another school? How does a person find out what those dollars? We know what they were allocated for, but how do we know what they were used for? Because it seems like to me it's pretty slushy. So,
sure
you know what
does seems that's a good word for it.
Yeah.
We have a group of parents and local citizens that have been looking into this for almost 2 years now. It started out with a couple gentlemen going to a school board meeting, where they were going to talk about hockey. And the school board, when they talk to the press, that's what they say. Oh, this is all about disgruntled hockey parents. It is not. There was one gentleman that was a coach at the high school level here in Bismarck for 6-7 years. So he understood how a lot of the things in the system worked. He understood how you work with administration, and what you can and can't do at the schools themselves, and what he could do as a coach with the students, etc., and how you are able to plan for how many people are on your team, etc., and what you spend and how much ice time you get, or practice time on the ice facilities. And he sat at that meeting and he's like, well, they're not even talking about the correct number of players. That's totally inflated. So asked questions about it, didn't get the answers, and said, well, if they're lying to me about hockey player numbers, what else are they not being truthful on?
Right.
And, careful when you wake the sleeping bear, because, we started looking, we started doing FOIA requests, we started attending the meetings as groups of parents, we started asking questions publicly, and they didn't like it. And they weren't giving the answers. The superintendent still refuses to meet with this gentleman. So we had him on our program to present the information that he had garnered thus far. And the more he dug, the more he found. And the more he was on our program, the more they started changing what they were going to do at their school board meetings. And they would start trying to address some of these issues, but it was to skirt around them rather than give the full answers.
Right.
And when we asked for the full answers, we didn't get them. Thus, our questions, it's like, you know what, they could ask the auditor's office for the audit, and this could be done. We wouldn't have to get the signatures. It could still happen. And if they were transparent, we could have this be over with and they could just show us. And if those numbers all come back hunky-dory, absolutely glorious. We are happy that our tax dollars are being used wisely. But we know that they've been operating at less than par dollar-wise for a number of years, about 6 or 7 of them. And they didn't raise mill levies this year. But when you look at the budgets between this year and projected for next year, 80 to 90% of their entire budget will be this year's budget just in salaries. So they're going to have to raise them to the max next time.
Yeah.
Jan,
So,
well, good. I want you to finish your point. Go ahead.
no, I'm just saying, so we need to look at this so that people are not overtaxed for no proficiency.
You
Well, the
are.
idea is a balanced budget. By state law in North Dakota, we have to have a balanced budget when we end the last day, when we gavel out of Senate and legislature. It has to have a balanced budget. But how would the people know it's balanced? How would they know?
Exactly.
So
And that's the point.
if daylight is the best disinfectant, Christine Basler told me that once. If I will say, I heard you laugh in the background. She doesn't have a whole lot of people backing her up, and she has a lot of people.
Au
pushing.
contraire, Pierre. She's probably one of the most protected officials in state government. I can't tell you why, but I can tell you that's so.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. That's another conversation. I mean, I'm not saying that I agree with Christine Basler, but it's amazing when you talk to her one-on-one. Either she's a bold-faced liar or she actually does agree, but maybe doesn't have the fortitude or the guts to move forward with those, and probably not the team to move forward. I think a lot of the people. One thing, Donald, my dad knows a man that knows Mike Pence, and they asked Mike Pence before I didn't care for Mike Pence anymore, but they asked Mike Pence. My dad said to ask this guy. He asked his friend to ask Mike Pence. Ask him why he didn't fill his cabinet. Why President Trump, the Trump campaign didn't fill their cabinet, and he said, "I already did." And he said, "What did he say?" He said, "What he said is we couldn't find enough men and women of good standing to fill our cabinet," and that is a scary concept. And so with Christine, I have talked to her many times, and I don't know. I think she gets so much pressure from these liberal school boards. And she told me how it works. I'm on a rabbit trail here too, and Jan, I'm talking to somebody that you're very much in the know. So, and feel free if you disagree with me. I'm up for that too. That's fine. But she said, "What?"
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. What she told me is she said, "Luke, the school boards run the show. She said it used to be that my position was a powerful position, and I came in and laid out a plan for the legislature and pushed a plan. That's not so today. She said what happens is the school boards come together with a plan, with an agenda from think tanks, and it's all laid out, and they come and talk to their legislators, and the legislators bring forth a plan for education. She said, I'm cut completely out of it. And so a lot of times I'm caught picking up scraps and I get all the blame for it, but I'm trying to do the best I can with what I'm working with. And you know, that's an argument on her side. I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
I'm not privy. I'm not part of her cabinet. I can't say for sure what she does or doesn't have on a daily meeting basis. I've seen that she travels all over the country, speaking engagements and being given awards for, she's been involved from the get-go. We're talking the Common Core era with Kirsten Baszler. We're talking about dancing around the Common Core and the critical race theory issues. And there has not been, until now, a solid definition of what they consider it to be. And I don't think that all parents and even all teachers agree with what the definitions are. And that's troublesome to me.
Fair enough. You're absolute. When you say it that way, I mean, this is the lady that we killed. What was it? We killed in, was it 17? We killed, which bill was it? Ben Koppelman brought it back, if you recall. Common Core.
Yes.
And then she made North Dakota Common Core, which was completely different, but word for word the same. And
North Dakota standards.
Okay.
That's what they called it.
Yeah.
So it was like lipstick on a pig.
Yep.
Still a pig.
So funny you guys are talking about that, because when I ran for school board up here in Ray, that came up. In fact, the Tioga Tribune killed me on it because I posted the scores for the Ray school, and we got into talking about, I said that I would work to eliminate Common Core, and of course I got backlash that there is no Common Core in North Dakota since 17. And then the next week I wrote another letter to the editor where we placed the Common Core standard right next to the North Dakota standard, and it was word for word the same thing. And we've got some superintendents or, some other people too that I was told that, we still need standards, and if it's Common Core, it's Common Core, so be it. It's just like, this is the kind of attitude that these people have. And to your point, Luke, talking about the school boards, when you go to the school board meetings, though, they all put it on the state. They say, well, if we don't do this, they're going to cut our funding. If we don't do this, they're going to cut this. And Jan, maybe you can shed some light on this. When you're elected to a school board, you actually have to go down to the state, to Bismarck somewhere, and take these classes on how to be on the school board, don't you?
That I couldn't tell you. I know locally that there was a orientation, I think they called it.
Yeah.
And, these people have to take an oath just like any state officer or city officer. They have to give an oath to uphold the Constitution, against enemies, foreign and domestic.
Right.
And, we should be able to call them out on it when they don't.
Right.
But, I think there's a little bit of a situation between different types and sizes of school districts. Now, in Bismarck, there are 3 pretty large high schools. Bismarck is the largest school district in the state, even though we don't have the largest population. You would think Fargo, but they always say, well, West Fargo takes part of Fargo's population into consideration. That's fine. But
You guys have got Century, you've got Bismarck High, and is it Legacy
Correct.
that it is? Yeah,
Correct.
Legacy
And
High School.
Legacy is more of a campus.
I've seen
Um,
that. I've driven
um,
by it before.
so yeah, meaning that they have had a lot of extra dollars to spend on facility. That's basically all that that means.
Yeah.
But in a lot of school districts that have this much money going through them and these many issues between the schools and the middle schools, the issues, we won't even get into those, but it's almost as though there should be a superintendent for each high school instead of one big school district.
Yeah.
Then there's somebody that we can have answer to our issues, no matter where they are.
Well, let me ask you this, because this was some of the questions too that came up when I ran. It seems to me that the parents and the school board should come up with what they're going to teach because, and this is why I say that, because as parents, we're our number one, our child's number one teacher. Let's just say that.
Hopefully.
Get go, yeah. I mean, and I understand there's all kinds of circumstances. I mean, we can sit here and talk about that, but parents are the number one teachers of their children. Going with the parents and the school boards and putting a curriculum together and what should be is the way that it should be, and not have, let's say, the special interest groups that influence like the North Dakota DPI. I mean, and we're kind of going off on a rabbit trail here, but we got a lot of interest groups writing our curriculums, writing our textbooks. I mean, we're in trouble. And again, it's because we as people need to get involved and take it back. I truly believe that. And man, I mean, I got a lot of heat for saying this kind of stuff, but I truly believe it. I mean, we as parents should be our children's number one teacher. And
well, when you see a society that has devolved, I think is the right term, to the state where they're trying to do away with the nuclear family.
yep.
Way back in the day when they figured out that if they gave women women's rights, which I still think is a misnomer, they would go out into the workplace, and then there would be two people in the family that they could charge income tax to,
Yep.
and then they could take control of your kids. Now, understand that we've always heard the term K through 12. Now they want your children as young as 5. Now they want they keep going, and now they want your children as young as 3. So when does the parent get to imprint on these children anymore? When your child is 3, do you think that they're ready to go out into the world and socialize with somebody that is not a parent or a family member, and give those people the majority of their day with that adult and not the parent? Some of this has to come back to us. If we don't stand up and draw our line in the sand and say no to some of these things, it will just continue to happen. We cannot continue to bow down to just the authorities because they are in a position of authority. They work for us. If we weren't
Period.
here if we weren't here as a community, as a society, they are nothing.
Yeah. No, I completely agree.
Are you saying that we should question the authority?
Oh my gosh. I mean, how many people in the last 2 years, Luke, have gotten white coat syndrome where, if the doctor, says so, then I have to do it. Here's a pill because you have an ill, and here's another pill for all the side effects of the first one. And then you can't figure out why George, Susie, and Sam are all drug addicts. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Where is common sense?
Well, that's the problem with common sense. It's not so common, so
Truly.
what you were saying there was a study done, and I'm sure you're very familiar with the study. One of the most famous studies of all time, actually. And the study went like this, and I might fudge the numbers a little bit here, but you can Google it and find the study. If, to my knowledge, I believe there was 3 studies done. It all showed the exact same concept. But in World War II, of course, German people from North Dakota went over to World War II, and they're fighting their family members down there. And we didn't need interpreters. There was no interpreters for World War II because there were so many people that spoke German here that just kind of used their services. So the question was, when they came back to the United States, was how did our family fall to this Nazi regime? How did they not stand up and do something? Because it was apparent that all Germans knew what was going on. There was no excuses. There's a great book out there called The German Lies. Saying that, they did a white coat experiment. Is that what you were referring to? The white coat experiment?
Well, no, but it applies.
Okay. Are you familiar with this? What this?
Yes. I mean, not to the letter, but yes.
Okay. Well, just for the viewers, just to bore them really quick, what they did was they took one doctor and two people that were supposed to be volunteers. The problem is actually it was 2 doctors and 1 volunteer. That's how it went down. So people in the 19, whatever it was, right after World War II, they went in. It was a massive amount of money, like $45, something like that back in the day. And hey, we're going in. We're going to be we're going to be a lab, whatever. So they come into the room and they say, here's a toothpick, the doctor, white coat, holding this little clipboard. You pick the short straw, long straw. And so Shiloh, let's say you're right off the street, and Jan is actually another doctor, my co-doctor. I say, pick a straw. Well, they're both short straws. Okay, congratulations, Shiloh. You are going to be my assistant today. And Jan, you get to be my our patient. And Shiloh's like, oh, cool. Well, meanwhile, you guys kind of made a little relationship waiting in the waiting area. Really an interesting study. And I said, okay, so what we're going to do today, Jan, is it's going to be simple. I'm going to hook you up to a small electrode, and I'm going to start asking you small questions. And my assistant is going to hit you with a jolt, and it's going to get higher as we go. And as we ask you questions and see how you respond under pressure. The thing is we're not studying you at all. We're actually studying Shiloh, the assistant. And because remember, the backdrop is how did our brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, moms, dads, grandmas, grandpas not question Adolf Hitler in his horrendous time?
Yes.
Well, so you were behind a wall and I was asking you questions, no electrodes. Mm-hmm. Pretty soon we hit you with one, just a little bit, just a little volt. And of course, what Shiloh doesn't know is you see a light on your side. It's actually not hooked up to electrodes at all. You're not getting shocked, but you're an actor. You're acting.
And I make a little noise.
Yes, you do. And as it gets worse, you're crying out in pain and you're talking about a bad heart. And pretty soon you're dead. You look dead. And the study showed that Shiloh, in every case, I think was like maybe 0.5%, something like that, didn't question the lab coat, the white coat. They didn't question it because they themselves were wearing the white coat. And so they kind of had to do what the white coat said. They did that again in later on, and then I believe it was in 1997. Don't quote me on that. They did the study and they just couldn't believe it, but they put the next lab person in there. But this lab person was in on the deal as well. And they looked at Shiloh and the doctor and they said, yeah, screw you. That person has a heart murmur. We aren't doing this no more. And if you don't, we're going to get physical. We're going to get serious about this. In every case, 100% of the case, the assistant, and then the lab tech assistant, which is another doctor, the assistant questioned the doctor and wouldn't perform it anymore. So what we're doing right now, the reason why they're trying to shut us down is because of exactly that. We are causing people to question. And when you do that, you have a big X on your back, like big X.
Yep.
You said something too, Jan, earlier today, earlier about the hockey. You said that there was actually there was less people or more people in the hockey game or whatever you were talking about. Like if they're wrong.
Number of players.
Yes, the number of players. When I was sitting on the Lafferty Committee, which is government oversight, which Josh Gallion takes his findings, what
Okay.
the government's not doing correctly, or bad actors in the government, or maybe they're just misled, or really an accident possibly too. He uncovered that there is no procedure to question any school on their enrollment.
Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy. So literally every school, little schools, I'm encouraging you right now, if you want more money, just say that you have 12 more students, because no one's checking, and you just get free.
Oh, come on.
checks.
Stop that right now.
You know,
because someone is listening.
sure.
But that does happen everywhere, because, if it's a small school, tell them you have 35 kids instead of 28, because you get so much money per student. They do that locally. And you have to take a look at some of these other programs that have been happening, like, the school lunch program, how they fed kids with these sack lunches and stuff during COVID, how you could go down to the school and wear your mask and your gown and pick up stuff at the school, but you couldn't go to school for class. And how much money was spent on that. And realize that depending upon criteria, if you were a student that had less than stellar abilities, you are actually eligible to be part of the public school system until you turn 21. So that would mean that they would be getting credit for that student and be paying for things like student lunches and the like, up through the age of 21 for some folks. And granted, this is not for the average students. These are students that probably need a little bit more help and the like. But it's not a K through 12 and a age 6 through age 18 thing anymore. And they will tell you that the numbers will change, quote unquote, because of the kids that need help that are brought into and taken out of the classes, even though they have a facility set aside for what they call the Bismarck Early Childhood Education Program that is supposed to help all of these children, pre-K and children with needs. But they've also incorporated all of those children and taken classroom space for these children that need extra help. And they change the numbers of eligible students for dollars and the like based on those. So there isn't a black and white formula. There just isn't one. So it takes looking into in order to get the real answers.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think we all need to start voting with our dollars. It's come to a point in our society where we don't want to be the negative Nelly. I questioned my government, shame on me, at a local meeting where they were talking about term limits, and they called me cynical because I said, well, I don't always know that my governor has the best intentions for all citizens in his state. Because of all of these executive orders that came down. And we know that we were able to, and when I say we, I mean we the people, grassroots level, were able to encourage, for lack of a tougher term, encourage him to take it easier on the bar and restaurants during COVID, when they were shutting them down to ridiculous hours. It's like, especially and I'm not advocating everybody go out and drink all night kind of thing, but these established legal establishments that sell liquor for enjoyment were their biggest part of their night is like 10 to midnight, right? Or 9 to midnight. And they were shutting them down at that time. And so we got like 100 bar and restaurant owners together one night, and some via Zoom, some in person. We got an attorney on the line, and we said, how can we sue our government? And the governor's office heard wind of that meeting, and boy, the next morning he released all of those restrictions on them. So it can be done. And I'm not taking credit for when I say we, I just mean we the people.
Right.
I was present, I was not the organizer. So there's no glory here whatsoever. I just know that if there's a bully, sometimes the only way to handle a bully is to be the bigger bully, but with different tactics, so to speak.
Right.
We didn't make people sicker and lock them in their homes. We threatened to sue them. So,
Yeah.
and right now there's a lawsuit before the Supreme Court, and I believe that they were taking a look at the merits of it today, and they're looking to decide whether to take it on January 6th of all anniversaries.
Wow.
And that's the big lawsuit. The Brunson brothers and someone else brought it before them. And that is suing the president, the vice president, Michael Pence, and 385 members of Congress. And that is for breaking their oath of office. Everybody thinks that it's, an election integrity type of thing, and that it's, still dwelling on the election of 2020. There would be a possibility of an impact on that if it were to fall in their favor. But what they're saying is that 100 people, 100 Congress people, persons, brought forth evidence that they said needed looking into, that may have proven that there was some foul play or some irregularities or something in the 2020 election. And what they are alleging is that because all of the rest of these Congress people did not act on an investigation, they didn't have to agree with it, they didn't have to approve it, but the fact that they negated investigating was against their oath of office to protect the Constitution from forces foreign or domestic.
Right.
Now, if they would find that true, or how that would ever work, I'm sorry, I'm not the constitutional scholar I'd like to be, but I do know that if they would take it on, it probably would implicate them as well as the SCOTUS, because they had an opportunity to take some lawsuits before them too during that time and chose not to, and not to investigate them. They just said on their face that they weren't going to take it up. So let's play in La La Land a little bit and say, what if that would be taken on, and what if they were found going against their oath of office? Well, the repercussions would be they'd be dismissed and they could never hold office again. Well, what would that do to the United States? Well, it'd probably throw it in chaos. But I think there'd be just as many people that would be delighted as there would be those that would be frustrated or annoyed.
Yeah.
And I think we ought to be able to do that with our state and local officials as well. We ought to be able to hold them accountable to their oath of office. You got to quit promising that you're going to uphold something and your behavior or your voting says otherwise.
Absolutely.
I know, radical concept, but
So the first thing we need to do is educate people on what they're actually, taking the oath for. Because a lot of people don't even understand that. And the other problem that you run into with that then is just like what you're saying, is how do we hold them accountable? Because if you don't know how to hold them accountable, this is what we get. And this is where we're at with North Dakota as a whole.
Our founding
we can't.
fathers. Go ahead.
No, but we can't. It can't be all negative Nelly, and
Right.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I think that I've been more encouraged and empowered by starting local and
Yep.
realizing that I have zero impact on anything or anybody that is in Washington, D.C. Whether it's our local congressman, Kramer and Hoven and Armstrong, no matter how many times I write them a letter or give their office a call, I'm not going to impact what they do on the floor more than likely. But I might have an impact on the guy that is working at the butcher shop that's also on the city commission or the school board or something. If you show up in person and you explain your position without being as emotional as I get passionate, and then it sounds
Yep.
like I'm either upset or that I'm going to cry, one of the two. But if you treat them with respect when you're doing so, and you get your point across, but you show up and let them know that you don't think they're doing their job and you would like an answer to it, like our local school district, they will not give you an answer at the meeting that you bring your point up at, but they will answer it at the next meeting. And if they don't, you can come back and ask it again. But if we don't let them know that we are the ones that hold the purse strings, that the money that they're spending on whatever they're spending it on is ours because we gave it to them through our tax dollars, and that we would like to be able to hold them accountable, we have an impact there. And if we start local, it can build upward. Do good things locally.
Yep.
That's right. And if one county
Great.
hears about another county acting out in a good way, it motivates other people to do the exact same thing and mimic
Yes.
that. That's
Mhm.
exact. Right now, if you just close your eyes, think of one conservative governor. Just name it off the top of your head.
Oof. Sorry, DeSantis.
DeSantis. What did you think, Shiloh?
Abbott down in Texas.
Okay. So we have three governors that are acting like Republicans, and all three of them could come up in a conversation because somebody's acting out in a good way. I guarantee you, everybody knew who Noah was. Everyone knew who Moses was.
Yeah.
If you stand up in your community, you're going to stand out. Just a fact.
Yep. No, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I think we all need to be encouraged, and we need to understand that it's not all hard, but that if we each do a little, nobody has to do a lot. And I think that's the part that people get really hung up on. It's like, oh, another committee, oh, another meeting. Well, when I say you should go to your school board meetings or your city commission or county commission, it doesn't have to be you at every one of those. It can be you on the September one. It can be your neighbor on the June one, and we have the ability to watch them online for the most part, but keep abreast of what's happening there, because there's so many positions in government where we could have an influence if we would have known what was going on. It's like, how many people knew that this gender study thing down in South Dakota was happening, and it's already the third annual.
Yep.
It's identity summit or whatever. It's discouraging to know that we haven't been paying attention. So some of the blame lies on our doorstep.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We, the Christian people, that's who it relies. There is nobody else's fault but our own. We are the spiritual barometer. We are the people that tell the temp. And we've always stood in the gap of an angry God, of God's anger. We are the people that just hold it back. Carrie Roller, I call her Carrie Kettlecorn. She just made a comment, Shiloh, and you posted it up.
Yeah.
But she was at a event here at our Dickinson Library that got to be very serious very quickly. But something that a young lady said, and I'm not picking apart this young lady, but she was practicing some lifestyles that I'm not spiritually okay with at all, and I hope
Okay.
she changes her way. But she said, just because you people don't realize, our schools are full of this stuff, and we need this information. It helps us. It helps us. And I'm
Yeah.
sitting there going, wow, where are we? Like, we've allowed this to happen under our noses. You said something else too, Jan. You were talking about, the school system taking the need of 3-year-old children. And you used a word called blueprinting. Well, I like horses. Shiloh's into horses. I know all too well what blueprinting means, and I know what
Mhm.
that is. Um, studies have shown before the age of 5, kids learn 90% of all of their intellect, all of their life intellect. They learn from 0 or from 1 to 5. And now a new study just came out and said that 90% of what they learn from 1 to 5 actually happen from age 0 to 9 months.
Yep.
Think about that. And so I say that, but what has happened to the Rockwell American Dream? I used to love looking at
Mm.
Norman Rockwell pictures. People sitting down Thanksgiving dinner and Christmas and big smiles, or their Marine son or Air Force son coming home. Beautiful American pictures captured by Norman Rockwell. But what is the American dream today, Jan? Like, what is it? So the Barbie gets her Ken, and hopefully they get their Mercedes Benz convertible with their brick house. And he's a doctor and she's an attorney. And they have this perfect little home with big bedrooms and nobody in the living room and no one around the supper table. I could just sob thinking about this. Um, Children that could count on 2 sets of hands how many times they got to see their grandparents. The television series, The Waltons, which was a huge series.
Oh, yes.
Who raised those kids?
Yeah.
Well, the grandparents did.
Grandparents.
The grandparents raised those children. And I'm thinking to myself, the American ideology is gone. And now, because we rejected God, people only go to church when we're in a time of war, or they're buying toilet paper and thinking, the sky is falling. That's the truth. Um, so now the government is stepping up the role. It should say on our quarter, our penny here, in our government we trust, because that's kind of what it's becoming. And now the government has stepped into the role and saying, hey, parents, you can't afford to take your kids and raise them. Animal Farm 101, we'll take those little
Yes.
baby puppies and we'll raise those little baby puppies. And then parents come crying to me in my barbershop, my kid became a liberal and I went to college. And then we blame the colleges, which I blame colleges too. But the truth is, parents, where were you? Like, this is your job, no one else's job. You talk about local control. Local control starts at your supper table. That's
Yep.
where it starts at. And so, if you're not teaching your kids, what are you going to have the Sunday school teacher put values into your kids? You're going to have your pastor, men? Are you going to have your pastor put values into your kids? No, it's you. And what, some of the television shows, oh, I'm ranting. Jan, forgive me. Some of the
I
shows I
love
hear
it.
people talk about in my barbershop, I go and Google like a 15-minute thing of it. I'm puking. I'm like, holy cow. You show me your friends, 5 years, I will show you exactly how you think, act, talk, what kind of house you live
Oh,
in,
yeah.
how many
Yeah.
times you're married, and you're watching this trash, and your little kids are coming around. That was porn when I was a little kid. That was porn. And now they made it so that kind of porn that was when I was a kid, X-rated porn, is now selling toothpaste on Netflix. And I'm sitting there going, what are we doing? Like, what have we become? The American ideology, we don't have a moral problem. We don't have a rape problem. We don't have any kind of problem in our country but one. We have a moral problem. That's
We
what
do.
it is. It's a moral problem. And until my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and seek God, it is a promise to us that when we seek him, he is faithful and he will come and answer our problems. And until we have pastors, I can't say it enough. Be encouraged. I love what you had to say, Jan. You said it's important to stay encouraged. We are children of the light. We are children of joy. We are children of hope. We are We are the lighthouse in this dark, dark world. And until people understand that, I mean, I can't listen to a lot of conservative news because they're just so negative. They're just so negative.
You know,
We've always,
I stopped watching regular network television in 2017, I believe it was. And my husband and I went on a trip a couple weekends ago. We were out of town and we were exhausted for the day. So we thought, oh, we'll just go back to our hotel room. And we turned on the television to a construction series or whatever, like an HGTV kind of thing,
Mhm.
where they were doing some remodeling. And every commercial was HIV medication and homosexuals making out in the commercial. And I'm like, well, this is why, you know, thank God, you know, my children, even without my encouragement, have not let their kids sit in front of a television. There is no network television in their homes either. Anything their kids watch is screened way ahead of time. But it when I see what's on there and that everything is from the medical community and not in a good way. Everything is a medication commercial. They've completely bought up all the airtime and they promote whatever they want to promote with their medication.
It's
If
on the
it's
radio
lifestyle,
too.
yeah. I mean, and
On the
it's
radio
like
too.
it's not Ken and Barbie anymore. Luke, it's Barbie and Skipper and what they're doing together in their rainbow outfits. And you know, I might get criticized for sounding like I'm being critical of that lifestyle, but I've always held the position of hate the sin, love the sinner. And I can still be friends with every one of you, no matter what you choose. But this whole thing became an issue when you took it out of your bedroom and you told me I had to acknowledge and tolerate it. And that's where I drew the line and I said no. And
yeah.
as a society, see that I gotta quit using that term because I don't think society is the right term. We got to stop being a society and we have to start being communities, because communities encourage one another and look out for one another and support in all kinds of ways, whether it's, you know, being there for one individual or for an entire family. If there's a fire, you all go to help, right? But if we don't start doing some of that, where we say that, no, I'm not going to tolerate that, and I don't want my kids to tolerate it, and I don't want you to keep putting it in front of them and telling them that that's normal and that's okay, because normal is only a setting on a dryer and it's not a thinking process.
True enough.
Personal opinion.
True enough. I like that.
And we are aliens in this world to add on to that. So you're so right. I'm going to stop using that word too, because the society, our lifeblood is none other than Jesus Christ. So if our lifeblood is Jesus Christ, why are we thinking like the world? When a infant, a fetus, is in its mother's womb, the nutrients runs right beside the blood of that child, and the child takes the nourishment out of the blood of the mother, but it never mixes because it's two separate bodies. We are two separate bodies. We are God's. We are literally walking epistles of Jesus Christ. Jesus is walking on this earth through us, and so you're absolutely right. Wow, that you just spoke to me real heavily. Real heavily. You know, what you were talking about just a minute ago as well, Brandy Pyle, Representative Brandy Pyle, one time, I think she's actually the chairman of education now. I think she is. Don't quote me on that. She told me once, I was explaining to her exactly what you just said. And she goes, now I understand the utopia of which you think. But Luke, we're on Earth. How is that ever going to work? Like she said that to me. That's pretty heavy. And then what you said too, Jan, about homosexuality. When when my kids or whatever, if they're looking at buying a car, I just draw a simple T like this: pros, con,
Yeah.
and we write it down. And whatever side wins, wins. It's nothing personal. We're just what lines up with our goals.
There you go.
And what's that?
I'm agreeing with you. I'm sorry.
So the Bible says to consider therefore the end. What is the end? The Bible is not a book of rules, of don'ts, and I'm going to clobber you over the head. This is coffee is good, but it's bad if I pour this in my ear. It's really bad if I pour it in my ear. That's all the Bible is. If you want to have the best life in the world, it's Christianity. It's true, unadulterated Christianity. Love your neighbor as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty powerful. I mean, all the hate there, that's pretty tough. And who's your neighbor? I mean, where does that end? It doesn't end because you're all neighbors. That's how it works. But
Yeah.
anyways, well, Jan, it has been just so wonderful. I feel like we could talk like another 4 hours. It is so wonderful to talk to a Christian sister in the Lord and that is involved in the political arena.
It's been a pleasure, gentlemen.
Oh, likewise.
We'll have to do it again sometime soon.
Sounds great.
Keep us updated on the petition and let us know how that's going, and we'll certainly keep everybody updated on here and help out where we can. So
appreciate the support.
You bet. Anytime.
Where can people contact you if they want to get a hold of you for like a petition or even a petition holder, something of that nature? How do they get a hold of you?
I will publicly give out my cell phone because it's out there anyways. It's 701-319-6188. Or you can contact me at janw@beck.news. becknews.com. There we go.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Have a great night. And Merry Christmas, too, if I don't see you.
Merry Christmas to both of you. Thank you so much.
Merry Christmas.
We'll see you, Jan.
All right. Bye now.
Good night.
So,
what a wonderful lady. Wow.
That was awesome.
Did you get encouraged? I got encouraged.
I did.
Wow. What a wonderful lady.
That was a good interview. I think I'm really.
You're encouraged again after I screw up on last week.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, what a wonderful. Did you feel a peace of God just come through in her conversation or not? Did you not feel that?
I did.
I did too. I did too. I'm not ashamed to say it. I did.
No, I'm not either. No, I did.
I am not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ or the power of his salvation.
No.
There is no other way we can get out of this world alive.
So just before we go here, Luke, I just got a couple announcements about the show, the coming episodes. Next week, we're going to have a big one. The guys from Guns and 701, Clayton and JD.
Are we going to have them on? They're kind of radicals, aren't they?
Yeah, we're going to have them on again. We're going to do a simulcast where we're broadcasting live from all our pages and their pages as well, our YouTube and Facebook page and their YouTube and Facebook page. And we're going to have a discussion. Andrew Cordnoy is actually going to join us as well. We're going to talk about the NFA legislation that he's trying to bring up to the North Dakota legislature, as well as Clayton has some legislation that he would like to speak on. So we're going to have a round table with the guys from the Guns and 701 podcast. So that'll be next week. Then the following week, we are going to have, I want to say this correctly, we are going to have Dr. Frank back on again. And as many of you know, we've had Dr. Frank on twice, and we're dealing with election issues and the fraud with 2020 and now here in 22. We're going to talk some more on that. And then the week after that, the 29th of December, we are going to have a Dickinson native. Actually, he lives in between Dickinson and Southhart. His name is Ted Garling. And Ted is a friend of mine. I met a couple years ago. His family was at a horse clinic where I had my daughter out at Elsa B. Hassauer's. And what Ted does is he is a safety man, and he's got a new book out that he's going to talk about, and he's going to talk about how he goes around and helps employers keep their crews safe. He goes around and does all kinds of speeches and talks, whether it be tailgate talks for your crews on site, or he'll come to your company and give them a talk too, and help encourage the safety life for your company. So that is going to be something that I'm looking forward to, because I don't know if you know this, but when I was in the oil field, I was in safety as well. And I actually spent a lot of time down at the Safety Council. I am actually a certified safety specialist as well. And so I'm looking forward to that. So that's going to be our next few episodes. So we're really busy. So
Sounds real good. Well, I'm looking forward to it. And Cheryl, I'm going to call her a night.
yep, sounds good. Happy trails, everybody. We'll see you
Happy
next
trails.
week. All right, bye.